The push to lower penalties on marijuana possession moved forward in Albuquerque and Santa Fe this week. Activists in the city of Flint obtained enough signatures to put the issue to the voters, and the city council will hold a hearing on the proposal. In Albuquerque, the proposed ballot measure is one of 5 questions crafted by the city council as part of one resolution headed to Mayor Richard J. Berry. The mayor has said there are legal flaws in the proposal, but it's unclear if he can veto one proposition without vetoing all 5. We're going to talk about that. In both cities, it's also unclear if there will be room on the November ballot. And Governor Susana Martinez has waded into the fight, stating she is opposed to lowering penalties on marijuana. She called these initiatives political moves designed to bring out more young people to the polls. And Dan, let me start with you. The governor may in fact be right. I'm not sure if that makes a difference on penalties or not, but let me ask you this straight up. This method the city council has taken is sort of all or nothing. The mayor's chief of staff has said there's a possibility of a veto here, and they have I think about 7 more days to do it from now. What did you make of this move? It's almost like a congressional move, putting a bill pack together.
I think that their goal is to force the mayor's hand, but I think the mayor's got no choice but to veto it. I mean,
why would he have no choice?
Because they're clearly in violation of state statute. The state statute says these cities can't impose these ordinances. You can't do this.
Okay.
They're all subdivisions of the state government,
right,
and they all have to follow the state law. They don't get to write. The state law is very clear. This discussion needs to be in the legislature. I'm in favor of the discussion. The discussion needs to happen.
You've been clear on that.
But it needs to happen in the legislature. These political games that everybody involved knows, regardless of the outcome, this stuff is not going to stick. A court's going to look at this. The language in the state statutes are clear. They're going to throw this stuff out. So what I think it does, it's a shame that it cheapens the discussion that should be had, that I think is a real discussion that should have a serious discussion, a serious debate. It's being cheapened for political moves.
But Laura Sanchez, isn't part of that serious discussion the voter being in the discussion? That makes it serious, right? Shouldn't they have a say in this?
I think that they should have a say, and it's funny that all the arguments that that Dan just made are perfect arguments for why that abortion ordinance shouldn't have been put on the ballot and for Albuquerque, and yet, a lot of the same people who are opposed to this were in favor of that ballot initiative, and the same arguments were made that should be a state law issue, not something that a local city council or city government is able to have on their own. That ended up not passing. It still went to the voters. Voters made a decision. I think that's the same argument people are trying to make, is this should go to the voters. They should make a decision. I think in this situation, what struck me as pretty ironic is the governor clearly saying this is a move designed to bring more young voters to the polls and being opposed to that move.
Right.
So she's opposed to more young people coming to the polls.
Right.
What effect will that have? I think that was, to me, pretty shocking for her to make that kind of context. And I think Dan's right.
Let me interrupt there. Was she early in the process? Because you think about where we are, and the governor weighed in. This is a very early time in the process. Right. Was that appropriate that she weighed in at this point?
Well, I think that I think that they're in a position of authority. They're in a position to have, a say, and it makes sense for her to weigh in on issues like this.
But issue, though, that means a lot to her.
Well, and one particular thing that Dan brought up is, the actual issue of the penalties is a discussion that's been at the legislature before. In fact, there were hearings in the last session that got a lot of attention, but not a lot of support from other people, to have that real policy discussion.
That's right.
And I think this, at the very least, lets a lot of the voters have a say whether it's something that they should be telling also their legislators and their governor that they want to have discussed in a real setting.
That's right. You were in the Roundhouse, Smile, in the last session when all this was going on. It's interesting. I'm still on the governor here for a quick second. I found the most interesting comment from her that she felt the level of that was appropriate. The laws were appropriate as it stands now. And that's kind of struck me in an odd way. Don't the voters get a say in that and how appropriate these laws are or not?
Well, as you've heard my friends here, that the voters may or may not get a say depending on your point of view. Yeah. I think the governor on this one, as a former district attorney, has been pretty consistent. She doesn't like this idea.
Right. And
she's also made what I consider a pretty good point, that very few people go to jail for possession of small amounts of marijuana. Typically you have thefts, you have those other things that escalate the penalties. When someone has a drug problem and marijuana, people say you can't be addicted to it, but I've actually seen people who think of little else. And I think it is a good discussion to have. I think 10 years from now the whole country, except for perhaps the South, will have marijuana legalized. But I don't think that she's trying to shut out the voters as much as that's the way she views the world. She's a former DA and she doesn't like this.
Right. Fair point there. Vicki, it's interesting to me, Santa Fe is not Albuquerque, which is not Las Cruces, which is not Maljamar. I mean, there's different attitudes about different things. I love
You
Mal
want the
Jamar.
Mal Jamar?
I
Yeah.
love Mal Jamar. Come on now. You know what I mean? I'm still on this. What's the matter with Santa Fe taking things into their own hands?
The law.
If this is what they want to do, and taking on the law as it stands now, as Dan's bringing up,
Well,
why not just go after it?
I think that shows a big problem that we have in the state, where at the city level you can do these types of ballot petitions, but we can't at a state level. So when we talk about getting voters involved in the process, I mean, I was sitting in rules for some of these hearings this year, and they went nowhere, and they get pushed to the end. There's no real discussion. You have people who drive up to Santa Fe from all over the state, and I know it's an overused word, but totally disenfranchised to never get to really address it, because it's the end of the session and let's let 5 people talk on this side and 5 on that side. And Laura made a great point. This is exactly like the abortion ban question, which everybody said is unconstitutional, not something a city can regulate, and yet it went forward and was put on the ballot. I'm all for the voters being able to vote, but I think we need to look at these ballot processes that we have, because the way I'm reading the city charter, if I got enough signatures saying the sky is purple, I could get that put on the ballot. And it's a real problem too, as we've heard from Bernalillo County, trying to fit all these questions on the ballot. I mean, we have nearly 70 judge positions up in Bernalillo County alone that are going to be on the ballot. And we're trying to get people there. We see the dismal turnout in elections and this mid-year election, and you know, I just think anything that's going to get people, whether they're young or old, to the polls is a good thing, so they can look at the rest of the races.
That's a good point. Just real quick, I'm curious if this is an opening for Gary King. Meaning, if the governor stated one position, perhaps he has an opportunity to state another position and get the base fired up, all that kind of thing.
Right. Well, I think you know it's interesting, and it has been interesting on all these issues what Gary King does, because he's in a position of being the state's attorney. I mean, he has to uphold the laws as they are, right, on the books. So he has a professional duty of doing that, and his office has to function in that way. And then he's the candidate, so he has to, you know, be very careful about where he stands on some of these issues. If he's for something, then he has to do it as a candidate, completely outside of the context of what he's doing as an attorney.
Is that possible? Is that
well,
really
as an
doable?
attorney, I think you have to do that, and a lot, you know, every attorney out there has to do that at some point. You have your professional responsibilities, and you have your, and in fact, all through law school, you're trained to try to think about it that way. You have an attorney responsibility and your duty to your clients and those issues, and then you have your personal, you know, ethics and whatnot. So I think he has to do that. Now, whether that translates well at the polls or whether it has any meaning for his campaign is a whole other, I think, issue, and that's a question that I think will be answered in the next few weeks, whether he actually jumps on this or not.
Interesting. Coming up, we go on the clock.